Well, for more on the ASEAN meeting, we're joined by Anthony Nelson. He's Director of the East Asia and Pacific Practice at Albright Stonebridge Group. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So let's start by looking at the most important economic issues we can expect to see addressed at this meeting.
Well, the ASEAN Regional Forum is primarily a security and political forum. It's attended by the foreign ministers of each country. So while economic issues are always on the back burner, they're not the primary topic of discussion. But there's no doubt that China's One Belt, One Road initiative will underlie a lot of the discussions. The ASEAN countries have a tremendous need for infrastructure funding. Most estimates say it's somewhere around $2 trillion that are necessary in the next 15 years to help the region achieve its potential. Every country in ASEAN, to some degree, is interested in what China can do to help make that happen. But in each situation, there are undercurrents about where the money is coming from, how the projects will be handled, who will have responsibility for what, that may not be hashed out in an environment where it's mostly people from the foreign ministries.
So certainly seeing it featured, but not necessarily seeing it dominate the talks. Now let's look at some of the bright spots that you're seeing in Southeast Asian economies. What are the standouts for you?
Well, I think from a business perspective, there's three economies that come up again and again as the most exciting environments for companies. First is Vietnam. They've got a pro-business reformist government that has the political will to make changes. Their economy is heavily driven by foreign investment. FDI has really been the driver behind their spike in exports over the last couple of years. The government is willing to engage in complex international trade agreements such as the TPP, even though that didn't move forward. And the population is young and growing. Indonesia is the largest country in the region. The fourth most populous country in the world is always going to be tremendously attractive to potential investors. And then finally, I think the Philippines also has a lot of fundamentals on its side, young and growing population, good English language skills, and a government that has shown its willingness to move forward on some key reform issues.
Now, speaking of trade deals, you touched on the TPP. Many Southeast Asian nations were a part of that. What are they doing now in terms of trade deals? We know that ASEAN has its own after free trade deal.
Sure. So some of those countries are excited about and pushing forward with the TPP 11 discussion that Japan is really taking the lead on, with the hopes that maybe the U.S. might come back to those discussions somewhere down the line. But ASEAN is also the central driver behind the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement that draws in all of ASEAN's individual free trade agreements. So ASEAN has individual free trade agreements with India, China, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. And RCEP aims to knit all those together into an agreement that, if completed, would cover 50% of the world's population. Now, the trick with RCEP is it's a little bit less of a comprehensive partnership than the TPP would have been. It's more goods-focused.
Now, we've looked at some of the positive aspects, but there's also some concern about what's happening with Thailand's economy, not performing as well as some of its Southeast Asian counterparts. What's happening there?
Well, Thailand has gone through a period of political instability that has made a real lack of continuity in economic decision makers. So you've seen Thailand have a lot of ups and downs in its economic cycle. And part of that is simply policymakers stepping in and out, things being left unfinished. And major part of that is some of the infrastructure projects that we've discussed before that Thailand really needs to help itself drive itself as an export economy haven't been happening as fast as investors would like to see.
Now, in terms of regional cooperation, we know that they have adopted the Economic Community Blueprint 2025. They adopted that back in 2015. What's some of the progress we've seen being made on some of the goals?
Well, so the ASEAN Economic Community, which was formally established at the end of 2015, aims to create a region where the 10 countries of ASEAN have free movement of goods, free movement of capital, and free movement of skilled labor. Now, obviously, that would create a 640-person market that would have incredible power on the global stage. However, not all the goals of the ASEAN Economic Community 2015 were quite met. Some of that work still needs to be done. And some countries are a little bit farther ahead and are better able to move towards the more ambitious goals laid out in ASEAN 2025, but some are still trying to catch up on some of the older goals. But we have definitely seen progress on items like the ASEAN Customs Single Window, which aims to have a single customs regime for the entire market, where not all countries are there, but a lot of improvement has been made because of the regionally focused work.
Now, given some of the global economic headwinds, in terms of your outlook for ASEAN economies, what do you think their performance will look like in the mid to longer term?
I think there's no doubt that we're going to see continued strong growth from the region. You've got an incredibly diverse part of the world that's situated right at the center of global trade. Young populations, different levels of skills, and the ASEAN economic community is only going to help boost that by allowing countries to take advantage of the different skill sets, different economies, different resources they see around their neighbors.
Certainly a region to watch. Thank you so much for your insights. Anthony Nelson, Director of the East Asia and Pacific Practice at the Albright Stone Group.